Hi, this is Anand Gupta, and today we will discuss Indo-US relationship, its strengths and its outlook. You can see the Prime Minister Modi is holding cricket bat and President Trump is holding basketball bat. Both are very similar, but both are very different in temperaments and their popularity. India is crazy about cricket and US barely knows about it. Just like that, India and US both are democracy, but they barely know each other about us, just as they know barely about cricket and basketball. So we before we dive into the strains and outlook, we must know about the historical line with India and US relationship, which starts with Cold War era. India started as a democracy, and India and US, before they could start, they really fell off, primarily because of two reasons. First is that US started supporting Pakistan, and India steadfastly stood with neutrality. Then came 1998 nuclear test, but the critical juncture arrived in India-US relationship was in 2008 when India and US signed civil nuclear agreement. That is where the India and US cement their strategic partnership for the coming 21st century. And now they are very deeply interdependent on each other, deep engagement. So what are the key terms that you should keep in mind? This is strategic engagement, economic synergy, and soft power bridge with diaspora at the heart. So before we could come out that what are the strengths, we must know that what are the strategic convergence pillars of Indo-US cooperation. The first is defense. So why there are convergence? Because both are the India and US are structurally very similar. The both are democracies. That's why they have both a vested interest in maintaining a peaceful world order where the commerce and prosperity could grow. So could grow the open society and innovation. So defense and security, and then its outcome is counter-terrorism. After Pahalgam, US designated TRF, which is an outsuit of LET as a terror organization, clearly shows that India and US work closely in the counter-terrorism. Then comes Indo-Pacific strategy. India 21st century is an Asian century, and India lies at the heart of it, and US knows that whichever India tilts switches the balance. Then comes economic and trade synergies. We all know all these factors very well. Science and tech. Let me tell you, with all the other factuals and factoids that you can get anywhere, that India uses NASA's intergalactical communication mission for its Chandrayaan mission, for its Mangalyaan mission, and for all future intergalactical mission. It relies on the NASA's intergalactical communication network. Then there is a key security highlight. Then the regional mechanism, Quad, and other IPF, where India and US engages. Now let's understand the recent strain, the trade dispute, 50% tariff infamously imposed on India. That that is just a symptom of rather structural divergence building over the time. You can see these are started earlier, like India and US were fighting earlier in WTO. Then the Donald Trump in his first presidency withdrawal this GSP status from India, which has a direct impact on textile and agriculture export. Then came this digital service tax. The President Trump every now and then threatens every second country which even dares conceptualizing digital service tax, and India is priority watch list of US for the IPR frictions. But these are just tip of iceberg. Then the other restraints comes human right. Human right, these all are factoids, but the real concern is that US uses bogey of human rights to advance its national interest. How would you substantiate this point? Just see the case of Sheikh Hasina and the Pakistan's General Asim Munir. The US designated uh, Sheikh Hasina's government is a partially democratic, almost autocratic, and there was an immense pressure on Sheikh Hasina. She was not even invited when the Biden convened the so-called Conference on Democracy, while as Donald Trump has got the Asim Munir as his best field marshal, while he is suppressing the most popular party, PTI, at his home. But the same bogey of human right US also uses against India to in its leverage. Then another strain has emerged in Russia-Ukraine war. Predictably, India did not condemn Russia against the wishes of US and continued the economic ties, and India has a very reason for it because in continental Asia, Russia, China, India are the three big boys. If Russia becomes completely dependent on China, India will be isolated in Asia. For that, India wants to support Russia so that this continental balance of power remains somewhat equal. Then another strain is China factor. Recently, Donald Trump praised President Xi and accorded this G2 status, where they say that we will divide the world into the spheres. The Chinese spheres will dominate Asia, and the American sphere will dominate the Western Hemisphere and perhaps Europe as well. But India is against that. India's whole geopolitical strategy was that it will soft balance against China with the help of US. Another strain that has emerged recently is the H-1B secure scrutiny, green card limbo, and student risk. 40% downfall is there on the students going to US. And you can also see that, that there's a very virulent attack, racist attack again going on India. You can see by the fact that the wife of Vice President JD Vance, Usa Vance, is repeatedly trolled in US for being Indian, for our ascribed identity. But like any other relationship, there is an area of cooperation and the field of resilience because of this relationship survives. There's a Quad, there's a deep defense and security cooperation, there's a climate cooperation, then there's a critical energy cooperation. But one thing is basically very sure that India-US cooperation runs on the suboptimal level. That's how you should, present your information in your mains copy. Managing diversity, defense collaboration, multilateral platform, and deepening energy ties. So, India's foreign policy and US expectations have great mismatch. India prefers strategic autonomy, multi-alignment, non-interference, development partnership. US wants complete geopolitical alignment, defense and energy transition, which is India depends on USA, and wants complete market access, which is not possible for many, many reasons. This is for your cheat sheet. That's how you will take, these one-page copy for your revision. These are the stage of frictions. These are pillars of cooperation. This is your keyword which should reflect in every answer. And you should keep your answer in analytical where you put a substantive example after every argument. And you should always and always write futuristic outlook in your answer, in your conclusion. Then there's an important thing to discuss here is Trump era disruption permanent or is it transitory? As we discussed earlier in this slide, you can see that US and China are considered into G2 world where the US wants to dominate Western Hemisphere and it want to let Asian region managed by China. So that's somewhat is very much came out into Trumpian worldview in its new Monroe Doctrine, which has come. So this is Western Hemisphere. So North America, US wants complete monopoly here, and it wants to let other areas managed by China. You can see the US is almost attacking Venezuela. It's matter of time when it does actually. For to analyze this, parochialism that is dawning on US foreign policy under Trump, Council of Foreign Affairs, one of the oldest think tank, says there's a structural shift in US foreign policy, which has, it observed over the year that US has gone from multilateralism to unilateralism. It can do so because US is a $30 trillion economy. It is still, commanding is sits at the commanding height in the world economy, and all other economy except China are meager. Like for example, India is $4.1 trillion economy, Japan and Germany $5 trillion economy, and truly dependent on uh, America for almost its geopolitical needs. So let's see that how India should approach this rising unilateralism of USA. Shashi Tharoor writes very interesting article here where he explains that Malaysia, Indonesia forfeited their digital sovereignty under pressure to just make a deal. Similarly, majority of European thinks that Indo-US deal is a humiliation. So why US is doing so? Simple reason, because it can. US has a humongous leverage, and this power asymmetry allows it to browbeat all other countries to extract tributes and excessive concessions. So this was the discussion on the current topics. Then let's see that why PYQ. Whenever the West and uh, China are there, the question comes at their intersection, just as 2024. You can see this question and also this question, where site of sovereign nationalism. You see, these are the sovereign nationalism. The clamor has come again, and the potential question that you should practice and also hope in your next year mains 2026, that how increasingly unilateralism in US is altering world order, how India approaches should changing scenario. Give three specific instances. UPSC has now started asking almost like give me three specific instances that you have to quote that, for example, India is signing negotiating bilateral trade agreement with Europe and recently concluded one with New Zealand and already is process with other countries. Comment on new Trump-Monroe Doctrine, how it impacts Asian order. We have already discussed. Now you should be able to write this answer very critically. Critically analyze US-China rapprochement, how it create new challenge for security dilemma. Please write these answers and let me know how and where do you need more help. Thank